I've always viewed the role of a leader as your job is to kick rocks out of the way
Yeah.
for the people who need to do their work. So you have to understand what is the problem that is happening here? What are you struggling with? Why is it hard? You talk about people first management,
Yeah.
and I learned a very long time ago. I was very fortunate to be, in this environment to learn this. That you should listen to the people who are closest to the work and the problem, um, and B, um, if you are blaming people for things that don't go as well as they can, then you're failing as a leader.
Yeah.
Because people are usually not the problem. Usually the process is the problem. Usually they don't have the rails to operate. They don't have a good system.
Many people want to be leaders. Fewer understand what it really means to lead people well. So what separates the two? Welcome to the Lead with Purpose podcast with your host, Merv Jersak. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with leaders who have been in the trenches and have stories to tell. They'll share their practical wisdom to help cut through the noise and get to the heart of leadership. So let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of Lead with Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Merv Jersak. Today's guest, today on Lead with Purpose, I am joined by my friend Gina St. who is whose leadership journey, by the way, spans engineering. I'm trying to think of all this. Engineering, operations. I think there was private equity. There was consulting.
Yep.
She's become an author. And I think I've even heard her doing some singing and songwriting. So for my audience of IT practitioners and engineers, you're going to relate today to Gina's take on the importance of process to enhance your own leadership skills. And to those of you who are less technically oriented, listen to Gina's approach to leadership as she blends her technical clarity with a structure to adaptability and some big picture thinking on day-to-day discipline and how to lead teams. So welcome, Gina, after that long introduction to Lead with Purpose.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
So in the next, let's say 5 minutes, whatever it takes, can you take us from your journey as an engineer to a leader who now builds systems that support people?
So by education, I'm a chemical engineer, and I began my career in the chemical industry. And what was great about the beginning of my career is, so I worked for Monsanto,
Oh.
and but I worked for Monsanto Chemical Company, not the Monsanto that people think of when they think of Monsanto today.
Yeah.
And what had happened at the time is that they had this blockbuster chemical called glyphosate, and they had enjoyed patent protection on it for many years. And when I got hired by them in 1992, they had 3 years left on that patent. And they realized that they needed to compete differently once the patent expired. And so they engaged in a business redesign. So from the very beginning of my career, from day one, there were process maps all over the walls, all over every building on the entire corporate campus. So I learned these concepts from the very beginning on how to look at your process, how to wring costs out of your process, how to be efficient, and how to be the best. And I did not realize that the training that I got in the 90s as a young engineer was going to pay off for me later. I ended up going to work for an agricultural products distribution company. And that was where I started in business operations. And all of the training that I'd gotten in the 90s was just amazing in that role, because now I'm looking at what is our process as we were trying to grow and scale. And so during the 6 years that I was there, we brought in a whole bunch of new products, and I was responsible for 8 manufacturing facilities and 26 different
Wow.
contract manufacturing locations. And I know I'm going over your 3 minutes, but this is all really important because we had to deliver a lot more product. And we ended up growing that division. It was the private label division. We ended up growing it 7 times over that five
Oh,
years.
wow.
And we did that through process
Yeah.
because we had this fragmented system. It was terrible. And each location was processing their own orders. So we centralized customer service. We had to do a lot of work with inventory and how we planned production. And all of it was process. So guess what? Now I got to work on process maps and re-implementing the systems that we already had. We actually didn't trash our system and start over. What we did was we defined our processes and reconfigured the system we had. It
Makes
was
sense.
it was a whole lot less expensive, and that was what enabled us to grow 7 times in 5 years. I was still in my 30s at the time, and like looking back on that, like what I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I had, that I got to learn the things that I did in the 90s as a young engineer, and then as still a very young person in business operations, that I got to do some really cool stuff. And that has served me really well as an entrepreneur and as someone who does consulting work because my entire career has been about process and systems and using them to be as effective and profitable as possible.
So from a leadership perspective, the process helps you. I'm hearing diligence. I'm hearing discipline.
Mhm.
I'm hearing even something as wonderful as time management. I'm hearing all of these
Yeah,
leadership traits, but it's process in your case that helped you develop those traits and continue to carry them on into your consulting career.
totally. Well, when we were centralizing customer service, all of that was process. That was not possible without process
Yeah.
because that was so stressful for the people who worked in logistics and in customer service because our systems were so fragmented. I've always viewed the role of a leader as your job is to kick rocks out of the way
Yeah.
for the people who need to do their work. So you have to understand what is the problem that is happening here? What are you struggling with? Why is it hard? What is going wrong here? Because um, you talk about people first management,
Yeah.
and I learned a very long time ago. I was very fortunate to be, in this environment to learn this that you should listen to the people who are closest to the work and the problem, um, and B, um, if you are blaming people for things that don't go as well as they can, then you're failing as a leader.
Yeah.
Because people are usually not the problem. Usually the process is the problem. Usually they don't have the rails to operate. They don't have a good system. And that is why they're struggling. And so I was really fortunate to get the support where I had a good consultant that I enlisted, who then defined all of this stuff, and we made the systems better, and we made everybody's lives better. And oh, guess what? We got to deliver more product and make
Yeah.
our customers happier. Yay!
Yeah.
But but it became a better place to work because people had a system to work in.
Well, yeah, because then they could predict what they're gonna do during the day and what the results might be as a result of their efforts, and I remember, running some major IT projects. Nothing frustrated me more than that all-knowing manager who would do a drive-by from corporate head office and say, "This is how we have to do this," and then suddenly you're saddled with something that person's never been on the ground in that situation before, doesn't know the situation, and yet they think that they, as leaders, can tell you how to manage your process, so yeah, I
Right.
can see exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's how it was, and I actually worked for a guy who did the drive-bys and blamed people,
Yeah,
and would tell me that this project that I was working on was stressing everyone out. I'm like, "No, this project is what has to happen to get past the stress." because
So
we're never going to fix the problem if we don't fix the system.
yeah, and
We're,
and
we're,
again,
we're hurting our people and making this a terrible place to work. And it's not their fault. It's the fault of the system because the system was never created.
and therefore the fault of the leaders who didn't recognize that and didn't put it in place for them to be able to work efficiently.
Right.
So for a leader in a mid-sized company today, I mean, there's a lot of pressures and new processes, new technologies that are coming. But for leaders in, say, a mid-sized company today, what are some common mistakes that you feel when systems get too tangled? How can they proactively avoid those pitfalls, do you think?
When you're talking about systems getting tangled, you mean
Yeah, processes, yeah.
you mean like we've over processed it?
Yeah, over-engineered, yeah, all that.
Well, there's always a danger of that. And there's always a danger also of having people who think they know, who will say, this is how it's going to be done. And they don't go on a listening tour first.
Yeah.
I think I would go back to that when you say, how do you untangle things? Because maybe we should look at how the realities of that, the people who do the jobs, how they actually do things and what snags they run into and why. And if we can listen, that is actually a way to untangle things, to take out steps that maybe are not value added or that are a hindrance. One of the benefits that I had way back then is that I was thrown into the fire. And so when I started doing this, I was 33 years old. And, so even though I had a lot of really good experience, there was actually a lot of experience I didn't have. I was still really young and recognizing all the things, and I was new to the industry.
Mhm.
And so recognizing what I didn't know, I defaulted to, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen. I'm going to learn because there's too much here when you
Yeah.
talk about the tangled web.
Yep.
It was very messy. And the only way for me to get past it was to listen and listen and learn, because who am I? I don't touch the part of the process closest to, the front line. So how am I going to be able to dictate what we're doing and what is the best way to do it if I don't listen first?
Yeah. So you took a fairly, let's go on to what you're doing today. You took a fairly big shift from, let's say, large scale operations, I'll call it that,
Yeah.
to consulting actually to lawyers, to legal small businesses, right?
Yeah.
So what mindset shift did you have to undergo or do for yourself to change so that you could succeed in your new role as an independent consultant?
So I didn't go directly from large operations to being a consultant for small businesses. I first became a partner in a small business. And so I was my first client.
Yeah.
Because I realized, oh my God, I joined this small business. I'm like, okay, I'm burned out on the travel. I'm burned out on the long hours. And I'm gonna be a partner in this small business, and I'm gonna have control over my life, and my life is gonna be better and easier. And I hope you're hearing the sarcasm and all of that. What I
I'm
learned,
living it. I'm living it.
yeah, what I learned is that small businesses often don't have good systems and structure, and small business owners are overworked. And oh my God, I worked harder and longer.
Yeah.
For years. It was harder than it had been as a corporate employee. So, but I became my first client. But what I realized is that I had to find a way to create systems that wouldn't collapse under their own weight. Because now when you're talking about small business, totally different. You can't, you're not going to do an SAP implementation in a small business.
Right.
So you have to look at what is there and what is really necessary. And also, like, if you're in a service business, you don't have a lot of the other things around delivering a physical product and manufacturing a physical product. Your manufacturing becomes how you deliver what the service is and the people who do the work to deliver a service. That was completely different for me as well. So I had to, I'm going to be honest with you. I went through a period of culture shock,
I
and it
bet.
was not easy when I first started. It was not easy at all
Yeah.
because, I came from all this sophistication, and I also had a lot of people available to me to accomplish things that I identified needed to be done. And so now I didn't have nearly the resources, so I had to be more resourceful, and I had to find a way to create systems that were simple enough that wouldn't collapse under their own weight. And what I found was a lot of it wasn't even software related. A lot of it was understanding what is our actual flow of this process and creating worksheets that people filled out. That, if you had a job form and you had checklists and things like that. And we did that before we did anything electronic, because we just wanted to put people into a flow. We also had a division that we later sold that did document destruction. We had mobile shredding trucks that drove around.
Yeah.
And I actually spent probably 30 days manning the office and answering the phone because I needed to understand a couple things. I had to understand, nobody reads your website. So when
Yeah.
people call, they actually know nothing, no matter how much you've written and how much information is out there. Nobody knows anything. Um, I learned things about what people complained about because maybe whoever had talked to them didn't manage their expectations. Like they didn't understand how big this truck is and where it can fit and where it can't fit.
Oh, yeah.
And how they needed to prepare to have their stuff shredded. So I learned about how to manage their expectations. I created a list of questions that we needed to ask them, and a list of information, and it all flowed to where they knew what to do, and we managed their expectations
So,
for the service visit. And the only way I was able to do that was I answered the phone. I answered the phone, and for about 30 days, I talked to all the customers.
yeah.
I listened to people who complained. I listened to what they didn't know when they called asking for service, and then I created a process to where they were fully informed, and we managed their expectations, and we got fewer complaints and happier return customers.
Well, and that's a huge, huge leadership lesson. And I know I had to learn that as well, that you as a leader cannot be afraid to roll up your sleeves, understand the business from a hands-on perspective, because not only do you then understand how you're leading or the people that you lead, but the people who are being led are looking to you saying, yeah, they know what we're doing. They know our pitfalls. They know what we're going through. And so they can help us. So huge leadership lesson that you just presented right there.
It was
But
invaluable
yeah.
because that period of time laid the groundwork for what we did for years thereafter. And we used the same worksheet where, basically it was a form that took you through how to have a conversation once the phone rang.
Oh,
A-
yeah.
And, you ask this, you tell them this, you make sure you've gotten this information, and that way the driver knows what they're dealing with when they show up, yada, 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 all that.
So
Yes,
let's jump.
and I did roll up my sleeves.
Yeah.
I was not afraid to get dirty.
No, you have to. So
Yeah.
let's jump ahead to what you're doing now. You just wrote a series of books. Can you tell us about that and how they fit into your leadership consulting, your leadership tutoring?
Okay. Well, I wrote the Arrival series.
Okay.
And the very first book is actually the end of the story. And the first book that I wrote, it was actually the backstory of the consultant who is loosely based on me, and how she advises people. And the reason that I called it Arrival is that when people sell their business, they refer to it as an exit. And the reality is you can't exit without arriving first at a set of circumstances that make your business saleable. So
Yes.
we ended up selling that shredding company that I was referring to, and we kept the litigation support business, which I still have to this day. Um, and what happened after we sold that business is that people would say, "How'd you sell your business? How'd you sell your business? How'd you sell your business? How'd you sell your business?" And I'd worked on M&A when I was in the agriculture business because my company was buying and selling businesses. So I was involved on the operations side of all of that. So I did due diligence. I left that out when we were talking about that earlier. So people would say, "How do you sell a business?" And my answer was, "Oh, I could talk to you about the process of the transaction, but if what you really want to know is how can you sell your business, there's a lot, like you have to have a business that's saleable. It has to be
Yeah.
set up with systems so that you can pull yourself out of it and it can run without you." Um, so mm, like how you sell your business happens long before you have a suitor and you do a transaction. Like,
Yeah.
Um, so so that was where I was coming from, and that was why I named the series Arrival, because I discovered that really business is a series of arrivals, and the end is just an arrival at the end where you move on to something else. So the series has 5 books in it. So the first arrival is arriving at where you've proven that you have a product or service that people want and that you can deliver something
Mhm.
good. That's your first arrival. Your second arrival is you systemize and scale your marketing. So now you can sell more. And then after you've done that, now you have your next level problem, which is your operations problem, because now you have stress around operations because you're selling more and delivering more. And so your next arrival is when you arrive at um, systemizing your operations so your business runs better. And now it can grow even more. And then the fourth arrival is the arrival where the founder truly gets to operate as a CEO, where you get out of management, where you get
Oh,
out
nice.
of the weeds, and you actually operate and live your day as an actual CEO. And then the final arrival is exiting completely. And you can exit in a variety of ways. You can exit by selling. You can exit by becoming a financial owner only. Um, there's more than one way to exit, but you can exit by being involved in the business. So those are the 5 arrivals, and that was the series of books I ended up
And
writing.
and you wrote these 5 books in how many months?
I did it over the course of a year.
A
Uh,
year. 5 books in a year.
yeah.
Wow.
And the books were written as fiction,
Uh-huh.
not as so I was advised by a mentor that my textbook on the subject matter wouldn't be any better than anybody else's textbook on the subject matter, and that it's much more compelling to write a story about what
Yeah.
you're trying to teach. So what I did was I created 4 characters, and the 4 characters are consistent throughout the 4 books. Um, and I also wanted to make it so that people wouldn't say, "Well, my business is different from that, so that's not for me."
Yeah.
So what I did was I picked 4 characters that were each in different types of businesses. One was an artist who was in an art-based product business. One had a functional, if you will, service-based business. One had a artistic and creative product-based, uh, no, actually functional-based product, and then we had an art-based service. Uh,
Ah,
so I was speaking to the different types of brain wiring and service versus product.
yeah.
And so in all the books, there's lessons, and each of them are developing their business, and they're learning and they're improving. And at the end of each book, they arrive
Oh,
at
good.
at that point. And then there's a recurring consultant in the book who is Lucy placed on me, although she has a different name, and she shows up and advises them.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Well,
It's written as fiction, and then there's like vignettes at the end of the at each book where there's like musings on what happened and what you should have learned.
oh, very good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm amazed. So as we close out our time here, I like to do these rapid fire Q&A questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
So what do you think is the biggest misconception about systems and processes when it comes to a leadership approach?
The biggest misconception about systems and processes is that you can do it later when you're bigger.
Yeah,
When you're small is the most important time to think about how you do what you do and setting yourself up to where when it's time to bring on help, they're able to be set up for success
very
because
good.
your systems are already there.
And then what do you think is an underrated leadership quality that you need for long-term success? Underrated leadership.
Underrated. I think I already talked about it. It's listening.
Listening.
You don't
Yeah.
know everything. You aren't as close to the work as the people who do the work. Sometimes you just need to listen, and and sometimes maybe you know better, but sometimes you don't. And so you really need to listen and learn and understand the realities.
Yeah. What would be one book besides the Arrival series? What would be one book that you would recommend to, say, emerging leaders who want to improve their operations and leadership style?
Oh my goodness. I've read so many of because I read a lot of the gurus before I
Yeah,
wrote my books.
yeah.
Um, but you know what? I'm going to name a book that actually isn't a process book, and that is The Four Agreements.
Oh, I've got that book. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
that book, it's a quick read. You can read it in a sitting, and I try to reread it every year. Um, but it's just a good philosophy on living and basically your approach to anything you do, including business.
Good. I got one more for you.
Okay.
In your leadership aspect, your consulting business, what's the single most important question that you ask yourself, let's say every quarter? The single most important question.
Single most important thing that I ask myself every quarter. I think what I do is I look at um what do people really need from me, and what do my clients really need from me, like what is going well, what um what can I anticipate so that I can do better with the next client. um there's a lot of stuff that we decided to pre-build because of the things that we learned, because if I learned anything in doing work with lawyers particularly, is that if you say, what is your process, people's eyes glaze over.
Yeah,
And so what we did was we pre-built a whole bunch of processes. So if you say, I'm an estate planning attorney, I have a pre-built process for you. And then what we do is we modify that so that we're not talking from a blank piece of paper. So
yeah.
we always say, we're not dictating this to you, but this is better than speaking from a blank piece of paper saying, what is your process? So we pre-built a bunch of things so that it makes for a better conversation. But if I look once a quarter at what I'm doing, I look at what are they getting and what are they not getting? How can we get faster results, and and serve more people and make life better for as many clients as possible, because that's ultimately my goal.
Yeah.
My goal with process is to make your life better.
Well, I tell you what I've learned today is that your blend of engineering precision, your focus on process, but also the human-centered leadership that came out in this conversation. I think this gives our conversation today will give leaders at every level something that they can put into practice immediately after after they listen to this podcast.
I hope so.
Whether you're inside a law firm or a corporate team or a growing business, whatever it is, the leadership lessons about process and that engineering precision, I think, are so valuable. And Gina, what I learned from you today is that leadership isn't just about driving results. It's about building systems that help leaders truly develop their team. So I want to thank you and truly appreciate what you brought to our audience today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great, and it was great to spend some time with you today.
If today's conversation added value, make sure you subscribe. And if this episode resonated, please leave a quick review to help other leaders discover the show. And remember, leadership works best when you put people first. Let's lead with purpose, together.